What's going on, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another installment of the Engine Room, a Detroit Pistons podcast brought to you by the Detroit News. And as always, I'm your host, Pistons beat writer Coty M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on all your social media platforms at Coty Davis _24. Once again, that's Coty COTYDAVIS _24. And of course, I'm here along with my co-host Tarohn. Tarohn, what's going on, my guy?
What's going on, Cody? And make sure you guys follow me on social media at Tarohn Finley, TAROHN FINLEY. Once again, TAROHN FINLEY. And Cody, I'm ready to talk Pistons and ready to talk All-Star game with you.
Yes, sir. And speaking of the All-Star game, man, that is was going to be the main point of our podcast today. Just our overall review about this year's All-Star weekend. I think this was a mixture of good and bad for the league. However, when you talk about the Detroit Pistons, knowing that you had Coach JB Bickerstaff, Kay Cunningham, Jalen Duren, and every single coach that's on JB Bickerstaff's staff. It was a very interesting, good, great week for the Detroit Pistons. And speaking of the Pistons, later on in the show, we're going to get into whether or not, the roster moves that they made, the one roster move of landing Kevin Huerter in a 3-team deal, is that going to be enough to push the Pistons over the edge as they enter, I don't want to say the second half of the season, because we're already in the middle of the second half of the season, but the back half of the second half of the season, because we all know we're about 2 months away from the start of NBA playoffs, and we know number one in the Eastern Conference. They got the second best record in the NBA, the best winning percentage in the NBA at the time of this recording. So I guess it's safe to say that we are expecting the Pistons to play early up until late June, if I'm not mistaken. But look, that's just my opinion. But before we get into all that, this podcast is brought to you by Varsity Ford of Ann Arbor. Tarohn, before we get into the entire All-Star weekend, I think it might be best for us to, of course, talk about the All-Star game itself. And I don't know about you, but going into this weekend, I really didn't know what to expect from the All-Star game. I'm not going to lie, growing up, All-Star weekends was one of the highlights of my year. Getting the opportunity to watch all my favorite players, get an opportunity to be on the same team, play against each other in like a street ball type atmosphere. That the game is always on Sunday, Saturday night. It was, the skill competition, the dunk contest, the skill challenge and all this other stuff. Friday night, at the time, there was looking at a young Kevin Durant, James Harden, Russell Westbrook play in the rookie sophomore game. But over the past 10 years, All-Star Weekend has been a hit and miss. And the last 2-3 years, it's definitely been a miss in all aspects of it. This year, they introduced a new format. I'm not big on tournament style, but I think the NBA did a very good job this year doing the tournament style. Team USA versus Team World. Basically, it was two, USA team versus one Team World. And Tarohn, what were your thoughts about the overall NBA All-Star game itself, in which the Detroit Pistons won that too,
right,
as part of Team USA stripes?
Right. I think this was great. I honestly was like you when it first got announced, and I didn't really understand the format. I know like the Robin round.
Nobody did. We was all lost. We were learning as time went on.
Right. I know it's kind of like with me like doing a lot of Olympic coverage. I know they have a lot of Robin round style coverage or tournament kind of thing. So I would say I didn't know what to initially expect, but I came away really happy because, to be honest, the first couple days of All-Star Weekend this year, I think it was the worst it's been since I've been watching it, just with the slam dunk contest. Dame Lillard winning the 3-point contest was fun, but
yeah, that was fun.
The celebrity contest, I've just really haven't been a fan of that, even though like Amon-Ra St. Brown was in it this year. So I tuned in a little bit, but to be honest, it was fun just seeing, like you said, all the Pistons coaches getting their recognition, as well as Cade, Duren, and the fact that they won. I think that just made it better. My only gripe was, why wasn't Duncan Robinson in the 3-point contest? They had Bobby Portis And to me, to be honest, I think outside of Stephen Curry, a few other guys, there's no better, like more important shooter to a team than Duncan Robinson is for the Pistons, just because sometimes he can be the only reliable threat out there. I don't want to say like Cade and those guys aren't, but I know they have so much more responsibility. So I just think Duncan Robinson should have been in it in some form. Taking Bobby Portis out, that would have been my thing. But other than that, I really like the last part of the All-Star weekend, I would say.
Mm. Um, the only thing I can honestly say I didn't enjoy that much of the All Star Weekend is the dunk contest. Um, and I mean, there's nothing else that you can honestly say about the dunk contest. I do think it is a disservice that the actual NBA All Stars and big name players. You don't even have to be a big name player. I mean, we go back 10 years ago and we saw what Zach LaVine and Aaron Gordon was able to do. And nobody really knew
Right.
Aaron Gordon at the time. And the only thing we knew about Zach LaVine was the fact that he won it the year before. And then if you put together a list of the top 5, definitely top 10 dunk contest performances of all time, they're going to be on there. So, you know, not having the big names there, I can't remember the last actual all-star that actually participated in the dunk contest. Not having that, and then the dunks that they was doing, especially Jackson Hayes. I mean, I think he was my pick to win, and he went out there and just did a normal, simple one-hand dunk. I mean,
Right.
I probably could have done that back in my heyday. I was like, bro, what are you doing? Like, seriously? And then of course Jace Richardson almost
Yeah.
just thank God that he's okay. But
Right.
outside of the dunk contest, overall, I just think this NBA All Star Weekend was good. 3-point contest was good, especially seeing Dame win it after we all know that he's not going to play this entire year. As he continued to rehab from his Achilles injury, but. Just the overall weekend was cool. Of course, the All-Star game itself with the tournament style, that was good. A lot of people are back being high on the All-Star game. I would like to say pump your brakes on that because look, this format was good. A lot of people enjoyed the format, but they only enjoyed it only because these players was actually playing basketball like they
Right.
actually cared. It wasn't them just going out there lollygagging or whatever the case might be. And the only reason why I say pump your brakes, I want to say since 2018, this is the third time that they changed the format. And if you go and take a look at the lads, I think since 2018, whether it was them doing the captains, whether it was them doing whatever that foolishness they had going on in San Francisco last year, or them, testing East versus West, at that time. The only time people complained about the All-Star game was the fact that when they wasn't out there competing. And I know you're going to say, well, Cody, they changed the format. They brought some intensity. The only reason why I brought intensity and the only reason why we saw them compete is because everybody was complaining about it. And these players and coaches like, you know what? Here y'all go. Shut up. Stop complaining. Stop whining. Here you go. My only gripe about that is, will that sustain next year and the year after and the year after and the year after? Because once again, if you go back to 2018, every time they changed the format, except for what happened last year, every time they changed the format, that's the very first time the competition level was there. The following year, it wasn't there, and people started complaining again, all over again. So that's my only concern. Will these players, actually keep up the competition or whatever the case might be to keep that All-Star game, interesting, entertaining, fun like it was on Sunday, but the overall weekend, even the Rising Star game, I still call it the Rising Star game. The Rising Star game, even that was fun. Every skill challenge was fun to watch up until the dunk contest, which I think it's about time that they do away with the dunk contest. Seriously. I do have my own concerns about what happened to the dunk contest. I'm not about to get on here and be like Stephen A and be like, it's all LeBron James' fault. I'm not about to do that, but I also do feel that one part of the dunk contest is the fact that a lot of players and even myself looking at it like, okay, what else can you do in a contest that we haven't seen before? And I think that's probably why a lot of players would not like to do it. But overall, man, I think it was fun. Shout out to JB Bickerstaff, Cade Cunningham, Jalen Duren. There was one point during the All-Star game. I truly felt like I was watching a Pistons game, just looking at how Team USA strike was, just moving on defense, like how a normal JB Bickerstaff team will move.
Yeah, I like that too. I agree with that. And I was gonna shout out Cade because I know he had his signature, what he's been doing all year, those chase down blocks and different things like
Yes.
that. Especially, I think it was the second game. I know he scored 11 points, but to me, the biggest thing was how he was playing on defense. And even in that first game, he had a fast break steal. He
Mm-hmm.
was playing hard in those last couple minutes. And I really want to just say too, I agree. I want to see what this, if they try to tweak it or something next year. But I did like the fact that they did have four separate games just because they were playing extremely hard at the end of the quarter. But I also like the fact that there was some type of chemistry with a lot of the teams. So of course, like the European teams, I know Doncic and Jokic are friends. So it just felt like they wanted
Mm-hmm.
to play with each other. And then you have on the other team the older kind of NBA players playing together, like a KD, LeBron. So it just felt like everyone was playing hard for their own motive. Like some guys wanted to prove they still had it. You got Anthony Edwards, Cade, and Wemby trying to prove that they're the next faces of the league. So
Hmm.
I really thought it was just great competition. And I want to see how this, like you said, continues to stack up. Because I think the last one I can remember that was this competitive, I want to say was, I think it was like around 2021 when they had the cap on like you had to score like 150 or something like that. It was like a
Yeah,
weird
that
number.
was 2020. It was the year a couple weeks after Kobe passed away, and they
Yep,
dedicated that whole
yep.
game. And I think the target score was like, well, the target score was 24.
Right.
So
So that's the
yeah.
last one I can remember. But yeah, it was just overall fun. And I wanted to say like maybe a star would have been in the dunk contest if Jalen Duren didn't pull out. But I did want to mention that it might not have been great just with him like kind of coming off injuries and different things like that before getting suspended. So I think it worked out the way it was supposed to. I did kind of want to see what he would have did. It would have definitely been better than Jackson Hayes. So those were a couple last minute takeaways. But to me, maybe they should move the 3-point contest to the main event, especially since Steph and Dame have said they're doing it next year. And, just
Well, let's wait on that. Let's wait on that because every single year, ever since I was little, every single year, there's always one or two players. We doing it next year. We doing it next year, and they never do it. I.e., LeBron James. There's several
true.
times I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. He never got into it. I can't tell you how many times I want to say in the early 2020s where I can't believe we at the point where we got to say the early 2020s now, but the early 2020s where we saw and Zion talking about we gonna be in the next year, we gonna be, and they never did it. So let's just
Hold on.
hold on to that. But overall, it was a fun weekend, especially for the Detroit Pistons. And I remember I wrote my recap and I said the Pistons, even though it was just Jalen Duren, Cade Cunningham, and JB Bickerstaff, the three big-headed monsters for the Pistons, I said they literally showed the NBA Detroit Pistons basketball on a national scale. I would like to say if I could just have one little tweet, the game before the championship game, you got to find a way to give those teams some type of break because even though I am happy the Pistons, quote unquote won, they ran over the OGs because the OGs was tired. But that performance Kawhi Leonard had in that third game, that was
Baller.
special. And I do
Yeah.
believe if they would have gotten some type of 10 to 15-minute break or whatever the case might be before that championship game against Cade and them, I think that game would have been a lot more competitive because Kawhi Leonard was balling. So, maybe things will change, who knows? But, shout out to the NBA this year, man. NBA All-Star game was fun. Now, starting on Thursday, the NBA is back. And the national game that's going to welcome the NBA back out of All-Star break will be the Pistons versus the New York Knicks. Tarohn on the other side of the break, we're going to talk about the addition of Kevin Huerter and whether or not this is going to be enough to propel the Pistons to that championship run that we are expecting them to have.
For 44 years, Varsity Ford in Ann Arbor has been more than just a dealership. We're a family, proudly serving yours. As one of the top volume Ford dealers in the world, we're proof that when you treat people right, they come back, generation after generation. And now we make it easier than ever with complimentary pickup and delivery for both sales and service. So you can buy or service your Ford without leaving home. Varsity Ford, driven by family, built on tradition.
As we continue here on this latest installment of the Engine Room, a Detroit Pistons podcast, Tarohn, All-Star Weekend is over. If I had to give it a ranking 1 from 10, I think I'd give it a 7. It was basically it was pretty much fun to watch. But Tarohn, on Thursday, the NBA will start the back half of the second half of the season. And they are officially 2 months away from the start of the 2026 playoffs. And the game to welcome the NBA back to the regular season. Pistons at Knicks inside Madison Square Garden is going to be the third and final game of the regular season between both of those guys, and I'm pretty sure it's not going to be the last game of the season between those guys because there's a good chance that they might meet in the playoffs. But Tarohn, when you take a look at the fact that this team has established themselves as the second best team in the NBA, given the fact that the Thunder has been on some type of decline over the last couple of weeks, you're looking at a situation where the Pistons might be the best team in the NBA. Not only that, the back half of the second half of the season, I think we're definitely going to see more Kevin Huerter, the guy that the Pistons did land in the 3-team trade that also sent my guy Jaden Ivey to the Chicago Bulls, unfortunately. But I mean, we kind of knew it was all coming. But they get a secondary shooter, and you're looking at a situation where they address their biggest need going into the trade deadline. You got it. Everybody is playing well. Everybody is healthy. Tarohn, what are your thoughts about how Kevin Huerter can help this team? And what are some of your additional thoughts on your expectations of what you want to see out of the Pistons going into the back half of the second half of the season?
Yeah, I want to say I think Kevin Huerter should help this team. And I think it's hypothetical in a little ways just because he hasn't really played playoff caliber teams since he left the Hawks. I want to say in like the early 2020s.
He did with the Kings. He was part of that Kings team that
the
on that
Beam team.
Yeah,
I forgot about that. I actually forgot about that because I remember he was on the back half of that squad and then he played for the Bulls. So I did forget about that part. But the fact that I just don't know if he's going to be in the rotation just because early on he really hasn't so far, just above guys like Ron Holland and, Dennis Jenkins, how well he's been playing. So I think he should help hypothetically just because would be the second best shooter on the team or just straight up shooter behind Duncan Robinson. But I just kind of question because of his defense, are they going to put him in at critical moments during the playoffs? But I do think he will be a better addition than Ivy, like coming off his injury and stuff, how he's looked this year. So I think he should help. I just don't know how many minutes he's going to be given to help. But what's your thoughts on his fit with the team moving forward, Cody?
I don't love it, but I don't hate it, if that makes sense, because I'm looking at it from a standpoint. I think the biggest thing about Kevin Huerter, and I know a lot of people have been kind of questioning whether or not he is going to be that shooter that the Pistons needed. I think he's going to be because he shot really well in Atlanta. He shot really good in Sacramento. In Atlanta, he shot 37% from behind the arc over the 4. He shot 36% from behind the arc over the last 4 years. In Chicago, he shot 33% over the last 2 years. And I think the number one common denominator that I found with Kevin Huerter, the reason why he has success in Atlanta and Sacramento versus Chicago is the fact that in Atlanta, he was playing alongside Trae Young. In Sacramento, he was playing alongside De'Aaron Fox. In Chicago, he wasn't playing alongside nobody. Right. Let's just call it what it is. in Detroit, he's going to be playing alongside Cade. And I even had an opportunity to ask him during his introductory press conference. The first time we had talked to him after the game against, I can't remember what game that was, but I had asked him, why was he so successful playing alongside guys like Trae Young and De'Aaron Fox, and why we saw a big drop off in Chicago. And he said, part of the reason why, that he was able to do that is because when you play against when you play with those type of guys, Trae Young and De'Aaron Fox, those guys are going to make sure that they get you in the right spot in order for you to get the shot that you want and the shot that you need and the shot that'll make you going to be successful. And if Trae Young can do it, if De'Aaron Fox can do it, and there's no disrespect to neither one of those guys, I think both of those guys are part of the elite point guards that we have in the league today, especially Trae Young when he's healthy. But there's another guy who is, I think, 2 in the NBA in assists as of right now, and he's on the verge of finishing second behind Jokic once again. And that is Cade Cunningham. And I look at it from a standpoint, if he has an opportunity to thrive with Cunningham, he's definitely going to get back to the player that he was before. Now, I would say there is a little bit of a concern on whether or not he's going to have minutes. I'm not concerned about that because one thing about JB Bickerstaff, a lot of people don't realize, JD, Stu, Asar, Duncan Robinson, and Ron Holland. Those are the 6 guys that's always going to get their minutes. Everybody else, starting with Dennis Jenkins, and I kind of want to put Dennis Jenkins in there as well, but everybody else, their minutes come with the floor of the game. If it's a situation where those 6 guys that I named, if they're not bringing the energy and the hustle that they need, he's going to make sure that he's going to put somebody in to try to lift up that intensity that we want to see to play Pistons basketball. Excuse me. If the offense ain't working, if the defense ain't working, he's going to make sure that he shuffle around. You know what? There's 6 players. So I forgot about Karis LeVert. Well, 8, because I forgot about Javonte Green. Those 8 players. The Pistons really do have a deep roster. But everybody else, they're going to get their minutes. Like I say, it all depends on the flow of the game and what is needed. And when you take a look at the fact that this is a team that has been successful, given their subpar ability to shoot the 3 ball, if you get into a situation where it's, let's say, 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter, you're down by 6-7 points, and you only made 4 3-point baskets the entire game. But in order for you to get back into the game, you're going to need some additional shooter. That is where a guy like Kevin Huerter is definitely going to come in at and play a big monumental role for this Piston team, especially in the playoffs, knowing that, look, we're all expecting them to go far. Them establishing themselves as championship contenders, I'm not going to say it's going to be finals or bust for this organization, but they better be playing up until May. We got to say that. And you're looking at a situation where getting out of the first round is no longer the bar for this team. No. Right. We've been surpassed that. We surpassed that when you guys won 13 games in a row. You better be playing up until late May, early June at the latest. So when you take a look at the fact that the expectations has risen, plus considering that you had an opportunity to address one of the, if not the biggest need that this team had, and it's with a guy that, look, I understand that when he was with Sacramento, they did not have that long of a playoff run, but he has experience. When he was in Atlanta, he was part of the Atlanta Hawks team that did go to the Eastern Conference Finals and was a part of that Atlanta Hawks team that, basically was part of Trae Young's best time in Atlanta. He has experience, and I think that's where Kevin Huerter is definitely going to have his opportunity to thrive here in Detroit.
Right. I agree with that. And like you said, the expectations have changed since that winning streak. And I think the East, it's also interesting to examine the other teams in the East, what moves they really made, because I know the Knicks got Alvarado, who's kind of like a culture fit. He's from New York, things like that.
I think that is a very good move that they did, by the way.
That's a great move, but it's not going to – I don't feel like it's going to take them from over the hump. Like, it doesn't seem like it's just a very splashy addition. It seems like it's a solid, very solid addition, similar to what the Pistons did bringing in Huerter. And I also want to mention other teams like the Cavs. They brought in Harden, which hypothetically could be a good move, but we know Harden's track record, and we still have to see how they
got two track record because Donovan Mitchell, he's on that same path as Harden. Just wait on it. Like, I got a cousin. Every time we talk about Harden in the playoffs, he always say, just wait on it because it's coming. And I'm not, no. Mm-mm.
And then the Magic didn't make any solid additions. They're just trying to get healthy. I think Wagner just came back for them before the All-Star break. So you got all these teams still trying to figure it out, and the Pistons have consistently been one of the best teams. So honestly, I don't think it's really about this addition. I think it's more so about what this team has been over a half in the season, and the fact that this team everyone seems bought in now. Like the fact that they also, another addition I wanted to mention was the fact that they signed Dennis from his two-way status to a standard contract. So just the fact that they're able to not get rid of Ivy, because it was sad the way it ended here and things like that. But the fact that everyone they have is bought in, and the fact that everyone can play a role, whether they play 5 minutes a game, whether they get no minutes, to whether they're the starters on the team, everyone's bought in this team defensively, offensively, and just collectively, like we see it with the All-Star additions. So I think the fact that they are willing to bring in like a small upgrade or a small addition like that, it's more so about what they've shown throughout the season, more so than just the, Huerter addition, in my opinion.
And with that being said, that's going to conclude another installment of the Detroit News Basketball. Oh, I forgot. We changed our name to the Engine Room. And with that being said, that's going to conclude another installment of the Engine Room of Detroit Piston Podcast, brought to you by Varsity Ford of Ann Arbor. As always, I'm your host, Pistons beat writer at the Detroit News, Coty M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on all your social media platforms at Coty Davis _24. Once again, that's Coty, COTY DAVIS _24. Sorry about that, listeners and viewers. Just some habits, you just got to break out of. That's all.
And make sure you guys follow me on all social media platforms at Tarohn Finley, TAROHNFINLEY. Once again, TAROHNFINLEY.
Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.
Peace.